A very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Saurav Razurkar, and together, you and I today will learn something about the ancient Indian history. Now, the ancient Indian history forms a critical part of the static GK module of general knowledge part. General knowledge forms the bedrock of every law exam that you will be giving in the next 6 months. So it is critical that you focus on this part, that is the static GK part of the GK. Now in static GK, one of the most crucial components is history, and history can then be further divided into ancient history, medieval history and modern history. We have all had some experience with history in our 8th, 9th and 10th standard, in any board you may be, and I'm sure whatever I'm about to discuss in the next 10 to 15 minutes is something that you have already read. So consider this as a brush up course on ancient Indian history part 1. So in this part what we'll be discussing is 1. The Stone Age, 2. The Indus Valley Civilization, and 3. The part on Rig Veda and the Vedic civilization. So let's not waste any more time and get to it. So guys, I hope you will enjoy this ride through history. So just a pro tip, before studying history, my recommendation to all of you would be to exclusively focus on the chronology, and with that chronology you can add up elements and you can learn those facts. So the task may initially seem daunting, but once a chronology is set in your mind, it's easier to correlate things. And as we will be discussing in the course of this 10-minute video, you'll see that there are quite a lot of bits which are involved with a particular period of time, and therefore it is important to take into account the chronology. So please chronology samjhiye. So let's look at the first part that we'll be discussing today is the Stone Age. Now the Stone Age is divided into 4 parts, and then it culminates into what is known as the Bronze Age. First is the Paleolithic period, followed by the Mesolithic period, the Neolithic period, and finally the Chalcolithic period, which is also known as the Bronze Age. In the Paleolithic period, which is also known as the Old Stone Age, the earliest person was identified here. It is known as the prehistoric era, but here the man wasn't completely helpless. Man was just learning things, and as you can see, the first stone tools were made of limestone. Please remember that, quartz or limestone. Now here man was a hunter, a gatherer, and agriculture, civilization, domestication was yet to come. So if you are imagining a huge scale, this is the first point, centimeter number 1, and followed by the entire development of human race. So it's fascinating to see how man has gone from being a hunter gatherer to what it is today. And when I refer to man, I also mean woman. So here henceforth any reference to man should be considered as a reference to man and a woman. Now the Paleolithic age is divided into Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic and the Upper Paleolithic period, and these are distinguished on the basis of the tools that have been used. And as you can see, the tools have developed over time. Upper Paleolithic naturally has even better tools than what was found in the Lower Paleolithic, and similar with Lower Paleolithic vis-a-vis the Middle Paleolithic. So again, keeping a chronology in mind, you have the Paleolithic period divided into Lower, Middle and Upper Paleolithic. Moving on, the most important place which is found in India where these tools have been excavated, these are in the Chota Nagpur plateau. So yeah, it's a important place to remember. So Paleolithic do correlate with the Chota Nagpur plateau. Moving on to the next slide, the Mesolithic period. This is from 10,000 BC to 8,000 BC. The timeline here is not very relevant because it is difficult. The exact timeline is still a matter of debate. So for CLAT purposes especially, or for any other law exam purposes, these dates are not the most important. Now in the Mesolithic age, it is also known as the Middle Stone Age and is the second part of the Paleolithic age. Now in this is characterized by something called microliths. Now microliths are small bladed stone tools. This is an important part of Mesolithic period, and I would say one of the most critical parts, and a question can definitely be asked about what characterized the Mesolithic period, and yes, it is microliths. Now a lot of people refer to this as a sort of a transition period and not a period in its own. We don't need to go into the debates about what was and what is. What we need to know is the hard facts which can be asked in a multiple choice question. Moving on, the Neolithic period. Neolithic period is also known as the New Stone Age, and it is considered as the third and the last part of the Stone Age. It spanned from, as you can see, from 7,000 BC to 10,000 BC. Now in the Mesolithic period, you can see that there was settled agriculture. Now one more point, in the Mesolithic period there was domestication of animals. So you can see from a hunter-gatherer, the man has come to has started domesticating animals. And now in the Neolithic period, you have settled agricultural practices being done by the man, and in this stage is what the Homo sapien, what we are today, the man as we know today, can be observed in the Neolithic period. There was pottery that was observed, and there was quite a few advancement in terms of agriculture as well. So Neolithic period is considered as the advent of the civilization, the human civilization as we know today. Now finally, the Chalcolithic period, starting from 4000 BC to 1500 BC. So just a trivia, the BC system does not work like the way we are not moving forward. BC system is before Christ. It is set as a date, and prior to that, anything that is coming is actually the one that is older is something that is farther away from the BC. That is the start of the entire timeline. So keep that in mind. It's something interesting to note. Now moving on, it is called the Chalcolithic phase is called the stone copper phase in history. It's also known as the Bronze Age. Now the black and red pottery came here for the existence for the first time, and more significantly, this period saw there were even better agricultural practices, social institutions, political organizations, and a very developed economic life. And you can guess how this has come into being. We can see that the Indus Valley civilization belongs to this place. Now that's an interesting part, an interesting thing to take note of, because Indus Valley civilization is something we've all heard of. So let's have a brush up session on the Indus Valley civilization, also known as the Harapan Civilization. So Indus Valley civilization is effectively part of the Stone Age, falls under the Bronze Age. Now the IVC is located in the northwest part of India. It had two urban centers. One was the Mohenjo-daro, and the second one was the Harappan urban center. Now just a trivia there. I would rather say trivia, or a better way to remember Mohenjo-daro would be Hrithik Roshan. I'm sure you've seen that movie. So Now the person who discovered, and this question has been asked previously, that who discovered the Indus Valley Civilization. So John Marshall was the one who was the Director General of Archaeological Survey of India, an institution which still exists. So in the context of CLAD, this question can become relevant if there is some pertinent news regarding Archaeological Survey of India that comes into picture. So do keep this in mind, that Sir John Marshall was one of the first person to have discovered the IVC. Now as far as the Harappan civilization discovery is concerned, or the Harappan town, Harappa, its discovery is concerned, Ram Sahni has been credited with its discovery. So keep in mind the discussion when it comes to a question relating to who discovered the IVC or who was the person behind the excavation. The answer should be John Marshall. But when it's specific to Harappa or the Harappan civilization, then maybe you can refer to the Ram Sahni. So yes, do look at the options that have been given very, very carefully. Moving on, the characteristics of the Harappan civilization. Now Harappan civilization, as you can see, we have seen how from the Paleolithic man to the Mesolithic to the Neolithic to the Chalcolithic man, there has been significant development. Now the Harappan civilization made a very challenging proposition to all the conceptions historians had vis-a-vis what the earlier man used to do. Now the Harappan civilization posed an extremely great challenge because it challenged all the notions as it existed then, that the man was a hunter-gatherer, the man wasn't capable of agriculture, the man wasn't capable of architecture, but everything was dispensed with and everything had to be thought of from scratch when we see the Harappan civilization. Now Harappan civilization is very well known for its systematic town planning. Nowadays we do see everywhere around we have systematic town planning, but imagine a situation thousands of years back, and that's where we see a very interesting turn of events happening at that time. You had common feature was the grid system. Please keep in mind, grid system is another important point in as far as the Harappan civilization is concerned. That is the street cutting across one another at right angles. So like what we see today it's a fairly regular phenomenon, but for systematic town planning at that time it was interesting, because you have to keep in mind the man developed from being a hunter-gatherer to town planning. That is definitely a huge leap in history. Now the town was divided into citadel and lower town. The citadel was the residence for upper class people, whereas the lower town was the residence for common people. Now this also indicates the social structure in the society at that time, that there was indeed distinction. Men and women were not equal at that time. There was a class hierarchy. So yeah, this point keep in mind, the names citadel and lower town, please keep in mind. Now coming to the third point, burnt bricks were used. It was particularly impressive that the drainage system there, a town in the Bronze Age had a drainage system and so advanced at that time, and it was made with burnt bricks. And no discussion of the humankind is completed if we do not discuss about the religious life of people. Now during the Harappan civilization, it was the chief female deity, the mother goddess, the goddess of earth, and the other was the Pashupatinath Mahadeva. And on the seals you can find the Pashupatinath Mahadeva's the Pashupatinath Mahadeva you can see on the seals found in Harappan civilization. Now moving on to the economic life, and at that time there was a barter system. If just to give an idea to the audience about the barter system is essentially a system where there is exchange of goods as opposed to money. and we'll see how this barter system did transform during the Vedic age. Now, art and culture, the seals found in the Indus Valley civilization, on which you could see the Pashupatinath Mahadeva, were made of statite. Please keep in mind, you can always take a look, Google it, and know what statite looks like, what these seals look like. I am sure they have images, and in fact they have. I've seen those. Harappan script, it is still not been decoded completely. It is pictographic, so it's still difficult, but that means that the human kind had came about along being, that there was writing, there was spoken language that was being used. So the style in which the script was written, that is from right to left. Today we write English from left to right, or any other script apart from a few scripts which are, for example, Urdu is written from right to left. So this style is called the Bostrofadon style of writing. So the Bostrofadon style of writing involves writing from left to right. Again, important and interesting rather, that the dead bodies were placed in north-south orientation. Because it has something to do with the religious sentiments at those times. So this is also an important question that may be asked. Now finally, the major sites where Indus Valley civilization has been found, that's Lothal, Rangpur, Suraktoda. A major part of the Indus Valley civilization lies in Pakistan, and the largest site in India is Dholavaria in Gujarat. So please remember Dholavaria, Gujarat being the largest site in India. Finally, what was the reason behind the IVC being destroyed? A lot of historians make a lot of comments on it, but broadly the idea is that there was a flood, there was internal fighting, the Aryan invasion, etc., etc. So the exact reason, since it cannot be pinpointed, it's not the most relevant for our study purposes. But regardless, it's an interesting read.